By the end of this video, you'll know the absolute worst episodes 2023 has to offer, from the grossest episode, most cringe-worthy moment, and the worst overall. And right off the bat, I want to start with possibly my most controversial pick. While I enjoy Fiona and Cake, the worst episode of that series by far is Cake the Cat. The show was praised for its amazing use of characters, dynamic, song, and story, and this episode takes all of that praise and chucks it out of the window. Within this episode, we see the aftermath of Fiona's cat, Cake, as she enters the fantastical world of Ooo. Up to that point, she was just a regular house cat, so it made sense for her to have an episode where we'd be able to understand her. However, if I knew she'd be the opposite of fun, I would have skipped this episode faster than a double YouTube ad. She's seen rightfully panicking in the beginning of this episode, she's given a far too long segment with this squirrel, and despite great singing from Roz Ryan, the voice actor for Cake, she's legitimately being the worst energy in the room during the musical number.
Why? I clapped for you.
I understand that in story, this shows Cake's first taste of freedom and how she's wanted this so much that she's relishing in the novelty of it, as well as showing why Cake just can't be by herself, alongside the fact that this does emulate real life cats who do often have an air of superiority. But there had to have been other ways to get from entering the portal to the end of this episode being teleported to Prismo. Maybe this is because this episode was in between two much better episodes, Simon's episode, which I spoke about, and Prismo's episode, which is amazing. However, I would much rather watch something that failed in a unique way than an episode that failed multiple times for the same franchise like this next one. If I were to poll 1,000 people on their top 10 favorite episodes of SpongeBob, I would be surprised if more than 3 people have To Love a Patty as their favorite. You know, the episode where SpongeBob made a patty so good that he fell in love with it, not realizing that it was rotting the entire time. Well, Camp Coral, which advertises itself as an extension of the SpongeBob universe, takes this concept and applies it to Patrick, who gets a cake but doesn't want to share it.
Can I have a piece? Can I lick the frosting?
I'll trade you my baby brother. Just a smidgen. A large smidgen.
It's worse here because Patrick didn't make the cake and thus was proud of his craftsmanship to a comically exaggerated degree like SpongeBob. Patrick is just a dumb glutton. He doesn't want to share the cake because it's written into the contract of Nickelodeon that at least 75% of Patrick's scenes must have him eating. I'm surprised they haven't made a channel called Patrick's Mukbangs, sponsored by Mountain Dew and Doritos. Some of you may feel uncomfortable that I'm roasting Patrick for being fat and overeating, and I want to make a distinction. Within this episode, Bubble Bass, who also wants the cake, was actually good because his gluttonous nature combined with his nerdy, pretentious habits, and that made him more interesting to watch.
That cake is 5, maybe 10 minutes ahead of us.
Cake? Don't you mean Patrick?
You have your priorities. I have mine.
I am not roasting Patrick for wanting to eat cake. I am roasting Patrick because the extent of the creative genius for his character is hoarding cake for 7 minutes, and people wonder why no one wants to watch this show. However, another show will take the crown for the most repetitive slop that makes me wonder why people actually do watch that show. Teen Titans Go must be conducting a study on how to TikTokify animation. If you don't know, the TV Night series is like their sketch comedy episode where they kind of put together random mini concepts under the larger running joke of Batman and Commissioner Gordon acting like children. Think about one of your favorite series you've picked up over the last few years. For most of you, you probably had like 10 to 30 episodes per season of whatever your favorite series is. Now guess how many episodes Teen Titans Go has had per season? 52. Actually, that's wrong because one season actually got 53 episodes. You know what I would do for a 52 episode Mao Mao season? Make a better episode than one that dedicates the first sketch to running a test ad for a Baby Robin toy. And if you don't believe that they would, look for all the people who bought the limited run of Night Begins to Shine Funko Pops. I get wanting a more low-key episode, but in the way that shows like Steven Universe were raked over the coals for making episodes that connected deeper with the lore, but didn't just progress the seasonal arc and thus were dubbed filler episodes, you would think that Teen Titans Go would take the luxury of making 52 episodes to do more than make their own version of Rabbids. The sketches often follow the same trash Robin joke that they already do in regular episodes, and feel free to crucify me, but the whole childish Batman stick, it's just laziness at this point. However, even Teen Titans Go wouldn't have the most embarrassing moment of 2023 when it comes to animation, because that goes to one of Disney's latest creations, Haley's on it. Disney holds the crown for animated TV shows this decade so far. However, I don't like Haley's on it. Haley takes her best friend Scott and his girlfriend Christine to an escape room. On the surface, this seems like a standard episodic format, but we must talk about Christine's personality.
I really wish I had my phone light. Oh, I really miss my phones. Wow, can't remember the last time I didn't have any phone on me. OMG, is that the exit already? I'm coming, my sweet phone baby.
Do you now understand her personality? Now imagine yourself trapped in a room with that personality.
Hashtag spooky. Hashtag wish I had my comfort phone. Hashtag why am I always speaking in hashtags now?
Panicking won't save us. We've got to pull it together. All of us.
Whoa, my girl giving a hashtag inspiring speech. Muscle arm emoji, shooting star emoji, thumbs up emoji. How it started, how it's going.
Do you now understand her personality if you were trapped in a room with her? Disney has other characters that are similar to her that do this better. Andrea from Molly McGee, Terry from Kif, Casey from Moon Girl. None of them speak like this. Each of them have their own personality, lives, and dialogue unique to their character and not their archetype. When you don't have a unique personality tied to this archetype, you get scenes like this.
Christine, no one knows emojis better than you. And hieroglyphs are like the original emojis. Decipher these for me.
Making a character useful in an escape room by comparing hieroglyphics to emojis to speak their language has to be one of the cringiest moments in an animated show in 2023. However, I'd rather feel cringe than icky at one of the grossest moments in 2023. One phrase I'd wish we stopped using as the final point is, "It isn't that bad." When someone is speaking about how much they don't like something and your final response, your sole response is, "It isn't that bad," without naming things that are good in opposition to that point, you just kind of come across as someone who isn't ready to admit the reality of the situation. So my question to you all is, rather than telling me how this episode that I'm about to show you isn't that bad, tell me what good could ever possibly justify an episode where Patrick drools over everyone?
Your raging mouthwater washed us out of our house!
Oh, I see! So I'm the only sea star who's ever slobbered slightly.
You know what drool is? Drool is spit. Patrick is covering everyone, including you, metaphorically, in spit. Like, is it funny? Like, I'll say at least they do some creative animated sequences with spit. However, it is still spit. If Across the Spider-Verse or Beyond the Spider-Verse had feces or snot as like a primary visual focus, it doesn't matter how good it looks, you're still using something that's commonly seen as gross. I'll acknowledge that drooling is realistic for Patrick's character, but that doesn't mean I want to see it. I will give that show credit that the grossness of this episode is an outlier. It's not common for the Patrick Star Show.
Is this the episode where Patrick can't stop drooling? Yeah, seen it.
However, as visually gross as this episode was, this next episode here made me sick to my stomach, but for a different reason. I Wanna Dance with Some Ollie is one of the worst episodes I've seen this year, and is one of the most disappointing episodes I've ever seen since making this channel. And to basically summarize my video on it, the first season of Molly McGee builds up her character perfectly. You have the girl who moves from town to town, wanting to build strong memories in her now forever home, even if she was cursed by a ghost. Her positive aura radiated the otherwise miserable town, and her ambition combined with her amazing musical sequences and solid comedy that took her do-gooder attitude and gave her a very much welcome edge formed an amazing character who I rooted for to save the town and was ready to watch season after season of. She threw all that away for a boy named Ollie.
We need
Dates? We already have a date. Today, silly!
However, this isn't just romance shifting a person into doing things that they otherwise wouldn't do, because that's natural, that's understandable. This is about a show brute forcing a romance that otherwise wouldn't have made sense without understanding why people clamor over the ones that are done right. I brought up Spider-Verse earlier, and that's a great example of romance done right. Gwen has her own life, her own motivations, and her own cool aspects that are not connected to Miles. Likewise, as said in my video about Molly McGee, losing Amity from the first season of the Owl House worked because Amity had a life, motivations, and cool aspects before meeting and liking Luz. Also, the Grom episode wasn't like the 5th episode that they went to. They actually built up the tension of wanting to see them finally come together. It doesn't help that the episode beat you over the head with how much it wants you to spread this hashtag ship on Twitter.
Is it finally happening?
What's happening?
You two. OMG, it's so cute. You two need a couple name.
Molly plus Ollie equals Molly.
But that's just my... Oh, I get it.
You'd think the girl who went into the ghost world and defeated the chairman to free ghosts would be a little bit more quick to explain why Ollie shouldn't be discriminatory to all ghosts, especially Molly's best friend, who is a ghost, who gets caught and trapped for that very same concern. While Molly and Ollie suck, at least there are people who found that dynamic entertaining. And I have yet to find anyone who would find this next episode entertaining at all. A Skin Wrinkle in Time should not count as an episode, however, it is an official SpongeBob episode. Now, why is it one of the most useless episodes of the year? Well, remember how there'd be scenes where Bikini Bottom blew up or just something wacky happened at the end of a SpongeBob episode? Have you ever thought,
Wow, I wonder how all of this gets fixed for the next episode.
well, there is the saying, every episode exists in a vacuum. That's where it comes from. You don't need to find out how everything gets fixed in the next episode because it should be assumed that each episode is its own separate story. For some reason, the crossover felt the need to spend resources to let you know exactly how Grandpat gets home in this 3-minute waste of time. Including this is the crew who wishes to stretch their creativity and randomness, just rehashing the gag from Truth or Square.
Who lives in an anchor under the sea?
Eugene Krabs!
Hey, Krusty and Red and Greedy is here. Come back with me, buddy.
Eugene Krabs!
If nautical nonsense be something you wish,
Grandpat Seastar!
then drop on the deck and flop like a fish.
Grandpat Seastar!
Ready?
If you didn't know, the Title Zone was a crossover episode that had 5 different episodes within it, and one of the aspects that was tying the episodes together was that you saw Grandpat traveling through each episode. Not only is this unneeded because each episode should be assumed to be its own story, not only do these stories in this quote-unquote crossover not come together for some grander narrative, but even if they oddly wish to give you a story-driven conclusion here, their best way, the way that they went with, was taking what they already did before. This episode is a contradiction into most popular defenses of the show, and again, a giant waste of time. But the biggest waste of time that myself and the internet collectively spent ironically a lot of time on was Velma. However, it isn't because of Velma's race-related controversies, it isn't because of the politics injected into the show, it isn't because of the casual stomping of the franchise it cling to for relevance, or even how women and men are viewed. A Velma in the Woods is the worst episode of the year for me because it destroyed the one aspect of the show that I would have passionately defended. Norville, or Shaggy as most people know him, within this episode, he's fixated on Velma, to which Velma for like 9/10 of the season doesn't seem to reciprocate back. Norville finally gets over Velma and ends up getting romantically involved with Gigi, a former cool girl turned artsy girl who is incredibly patient with Norville as he processes not having his social life revolve around a girl who used his vulnerable thoughts and insecurities for comedy. Does he listen to his new girlfriend Gigi? Of course not. And when she wants to spend quality time together away from Velma, he says this line here.
The serial killer is near my cabin and you didn't tell me? The hottest remaining girl at the school?
I wasn't expecting you to be here. Also, for what it's worth, Daphne is technically hotter, you just have a mildly better personality.
Even if you believe Daphne is hotter, or at least perceived as hotter, who does this benefit? Ruining this relationship by making Norville just as backwards as Velma just shows how the show went out of its way to make sure nothing good comes from anyone. However, I can't even say Velma and Norville are equally bad because at least Norville didn't fake a mental illness to extract sympathy from someone he calls a friend.
Velma, what's happening?
I'm having a deadly hallucination.
I thought those were over.
Me too. Being so close to finding my mom must have triggered it. But go shoot your calendar. I'm sure I won't have another one in the woods and die all alone.
Hallucinations? Well, Velma doesn't have those anymore. I mean, you wouldn't know it given how tired and puffy she still looks.
I'm sorry, but can you blame me? Just when we finally reconnect, I learn you have some other friend you're obsessed with.
Within this episode, we see Velma manipulate Daphne into joining her on her mission to find out about her family, when throughout this entire series, she hasn't cared about Daphne's developments with her family, or Norville's feelings for her. Daphne and Gigi would much rather leave these two miserable in this cabin and venture into the woods where an alleged serial killer may be, than even spend a single second more by them. And I'm struggling to find a reason why that isn't the most preferable option. However, what is a preferable option is you clicking on this next video to see the best of 2023 episodes that blow all of these episodes out of the water. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you there.